TV. This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hello and welcome to Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television, Grey Bruce. I'm Denise Reid, and normally you see Fred Wallace, but fortunately Fred's not here today again, so I'm on my own. Last week I had David Adair sit in for Fred. That worked out really quite nicely, but I'm on my own. We're going to flow with it. Coming up today on our program, our feature partner video will be the Bright Shores Meaford Hospital Foundation. This is our 35th episode, and the whole idea started with Willard Vanderploeg and Stuart Reid, and they thought they wanted a program that might introduce into our community what living well, giving well. We've had lawyers, we've had investment advisors, we've had charities, lots of ways of how do we live well and give well in our community. And if you want to know how to give a legacy gift in your will, go visit willpower.ca. It's a great website that our sponsors are involved with, and can give you an idea on how you can do your will and how you can help in your community. Our host charity, Chapman House Grey Bruce Hospice, they have a newly formed foundation, and their Hike for Hospice is coming up May 24th at Harrison Park. So if you want any more information on that, you can go to gbhfoundation.com. So we'll get on with the show. Our guest today is Christie Leeder.
Hello.
Thank you for coming, Christie.
Thank you for having me.
You're from RBC Dominion Securities. So maybe you can just, instead of me fumbling through the your bio, you give us a little background on what you do and where you work in and what's up.
Right, so I work for the Leeder and Associates Wealth Management Group of RBC Dominion Securities. So there's 5 advisors on the team. My past life, I was a chartered accountant with BDO here in town. And then almost 10 years ago, I came to work with the team at RBC Dominion Securities. We provide tax-efficient wealth plans and thoughtful strategies for maintaining your legacy, intergenerational wealth, building up your portfolio, and of course using it in your retirement.
Yeah. So you had a little, you have a mentor there, I guess. Your dad,
yes,
Bert Leeder, yes, has been, whether he started that or whatever, I think. And so did he entice you to come leave BDO and go into the family?
There was a little bit of both. I think there was a little bit of both. There was, you know, I loved the team at BDO and I loved the work, but, you know, I was getting different job opportunities, and he said, just hold on, why don't you come work with me? And yeah, he's built the team there, very successful team. Another young advisor, Matt Whittles, just joined the team, a familiar Owen Sound name. And so lots of different perspectives there, and so many mentors, I guess.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's always great when you're working in an environment like that to have different thoughts and different energies and get everybody involved. So you've been able to learn from your dad, and that. So when we talk about, like, our topic today is leaving a legacy with your RSP RIF plan. Okay, so right away I say, oh, what is that? You know, RSP. What is RSP? And then we'll say, what is a RIF?
So an RSP is a registered retirement savings plan, and a RIF is a registered income fund, and they're pretty much the same thing. They like to call it a RIF when it gets turned into when you're decumulating, when you're taking the money out. So RSP, registered saving plan, you're contributing, you're building it up. RIF, registered income fund, you're now using that fund to fund your lifestyle in your retirement.
So I guess when it switches from an RSP to a RIF will depend on when you retire.
Many factors, yes. So the government actually forces you to turn it into a RIF at age 72.
Oh, okay.
And then they start to impose a minimum percentage that you have to take out. So at 72, you're required to switch your RSP to a RIF. You may decide with your advisor to do so beforehand if it makes sense for you. There's many reasons to do so: cash flow needs, lifestyle, your health. So you may decide to do so beforehand. But 72, you have to take 5.28% out. And by the time you reach 90, that percentage increases to 20. So throughout your lifetime, the government's sort of forcing you to withdraw from your RIF.
Yeah, well, I guess we hope we're still around at 90 to be withdrawing it out. So, I mean, we talk about saving for our, retirement. And then this is kind of interesting where we want to retire and with that, but how can we then also do that towards our charity or our estate?
Right. So I think in some circumstances, people don't necessarily realize the income tax expense that the estate will face if they were to, as we like to say, get hit by the bus tomorrow. So when you're using your RIF and your registered plan to designate a beneficiary as a charity, it can provide some benefits to the estate, most importantly a charitable tax donation that can help reduce that final tax bill.
And I think, in most people's case, throughout our whole lives, when we're working, how much does the government get for our regular earnings? So I think that there's always ways that we're trying to look at keeping it away from the government and keeping as much as we have, right?
Yeah.
And that's why people do the RSPs to begin with, right?
Right.
So what are the, benefit, how does it work when you, you put into an RSP and then if you take it out, how does that all work?
Yeah, so when you're contributing to an RSP, the main benefit is that you get an income tax deduction. So from your net income down to your taxable income, you're getting that deduction amount of the contribution and you're saving tax at your marginal rate. So then when it's in the RSP account, it continues to accumulate tax-free, and it isn't until you take it out again, that you withdraw, that you start to get taxed. And the benefit would be deferring tax from now when you're working, you're getting a higher wage, deferring it until you're retired, you're likely not any longer earning your highest wage. You're in a lower income tax bracket. So hopefully it'll provide some tax savings that way. So deferral and savings.
Yeah, and I think that was something I remember when I would say, well, okay, so you put it in as an RSP and that, well, then, when you take it out, you're still getting charged tax. However, the money you'll be making at that point when you've retired and you're older should be less than what you were when you're making at your peak.
In most cases, it is.
In most cases.
Yeah.
I think that it's always important when we talk about this because honestly, I worked in a bank for a lot of years and I should know a lot of that stuff, but sometimes it just gets too complicated.
Yeah, and I was, in my former role, I was a chartered accountant working in doing personal income taxes, and so really thought I was very knowledgeable about everything, but it's not really until you get into the intricacies of the rules and the details for specialized personal tax planning that it's hard to grasp.
Yeah, it is hard to grasp, and I really think that that's why. If you can do it on your own and you know it, then that's great, but I think having a team, going to your financial advisor and saying, and the suggestions that you might not understand or might not know. Also, too, do you have relationships then with lawyers? Like when you're there's another part of your team, right?
Right, like they're an extension through us, and a lot of the lawyers locally have been around for a long time, or at least their firms have. And so we do work closely with the lawyers to review the wills. Our firm, RBC Dominion Securities, we're lucky enough to have a team of experts at our fingertips as well to get some advice internally. But a lot of times we like to work with your lawyer in reviewing the will and making sure everything's coherent with each other and all the pieces are talking to each other properly. Yeah. So what you want to happen when you pass does happen.
Yeah, and that's a big, on previous episode, the communication of that and communicating what you want to do with that when you get it there. When you pass, I guess, whether it's in your will and that, do you take that action? Do the lawyers get in touch with you? or do people come to you directly and say, okay, or do you just, find out?
Sometimes we find out. A lot of the times we're one of the first point of contacts with our clients. If someone has an illness, normally they're in touch with us and we're kind of planning ahead of time. If it's a sudden death, a lot of times we are that first point of contact with the client's spouse or their children, because we've made those relationships for over several years. And we're oftentimes the first point. Sometimes we find out a little bit later, but it's usually us working with the lawyers and the funeral home.
So do people, so they have their investments, and I mean, we've talked about lots, and when I say we, Fred and I, our guests, about looking after our family. I mean, that seems to be what we really want to do. However, there is opportunities when you look after family, but to have that extra for charities. Right. And can people go to you and say, okay, I want this certain amount of money or whatever, this investment to go to a charity directly upon their death?
Yep. So charities can be named directly as beneficiaries in the on the account for registered accounts. So that's your RSP, your RIF, and your tax-free account. So you can name a beneficiary directly. The benefit of naming a direct beneficiary is that those funds in that account will pass outside of your will and move directly to those named beneficiaries.
Okay.
So they won't be subject to probate taxes, and the funds go out right away. There are some issues with doing that. First, you have to understand what the tax liability would be upon your death. Okay. So on the death of the first of the two spouses or common law partners, it's not as big of an issue as the death of the second. There are provisions in the Income Tax Act that allow for a tax-deferred rollover to a spouse. So if you were to pass and your spouse was named a beneficiary or successor annuitant on your RIF or your RSP, then they would get your RSP on a tax-deferred basis. So you wouldn't have to pay tax till your spouse passed away or they spent the money.
And I think that's, once again, we're trying to figure out how we can, do that without letting that government have as much as we can. So you're watching Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television, Grey County. And our host charity today is Chapman House Grey Bruce Hospice. And we will return with Christie asking a few more questions on RSP, RIF. We're going to go with the short forms there. And right now we're going to watch a video from Bright Shores Meaford Hospital Foundation.
Hi, I'm Diane Hilliard, and I'm a director at the Meaford Hospital Foundation. The foundation works with the community to ensure that our physicians, nurses, and technical staff always have the equipment they need to provide expert and compassionate patient care. Contrary to popular belief, the province does not fund new medical equipment and other capital needs. 100% of the funding for those pieces of equipment are done through the Hospital Foundation, with the support of our community. Donations mean faster, more accurate diagnoses, less invasive procedures, enhanced safety, less pain, and quicker recovery. The result is a faster return to home and to regular activities. If we have up-to-date equipment and facilities, we will attract and retain the medical professionals that we so desperately need. In 2023-2024, we had more than 13,500 ER visits, over 10,500 radiology procedures, 600,000 lab tests, and almost 6,000 inpatient care days. Patient care always comes first. Whether you give a one-time gift, become a monthly donor, or name the foundation in your will, you'll help to ensure that the foundation always has the financial resources to meet the needs of the hospital. With your support, we'll keep quality health care close to home.
Welcome back to Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television. Grey Bruce. We just watched a video there from the Bright Shores Meaford Hospital Foundation and their local sponsor with the Willpower campaign and providing us to be able to do the Living Well, Giving Well show. One of their major fundraisers is coming up. It's called the Meaford Harbor 5K Run Walk on July 12th. And their website is mhfoundation.ca. You get more information because it's not just running, it's not walking. There's a whole bunch of events, and that's one of their major fundraisers. And if you're still looking, if you want to create a legacy gift in your will, go to willpower.ca, and that's the, it gives you all kinds of information and directions on what you can do as far as giving in your will. I'm Denise Reid, and my guest, Christie, Leeder, and we've been talking about leaving a legacy with your RSP, your RIF, and the plan. Before the break, we were talking about, I don't think we finished. What didn't we finish, Christie?
We were discussing the potential tax liability on your death, and it really is on the second of the two spouses that it really comes into play. So your RSP or RIF, if you got hit by the bus tomorrow, the fair market value would come into your final income tax return all at once, and so that could actually leave a pretty substantial tax bill. And so one of the ways you can get around paying the full amount to the government is to name a beneficiary or a partial beneficiary, or even a set amount through your will to a charity, and that will help to reduce the income tax bill on that final bill.
Yeah, I mean, on the wills, when we talk about, everybody is always worried about their family and whatever, but there's so many opportunities and so many charities that can benefit from a legacy gift in a will. And then you avoid some taxes.
Yes.
By doing, who you're going to give it to and name. So there's another vehicle. It's and my daughter, who's 31, just getting into all of this, like TFSA.
Yes.
And she was telling me on the weekend as she was doing her taxes that she had done her TFSA, and I'm going, okay, can you give me what that means again?
Right. So the TFSA is the tax-free savings account, and it is also a registered account, meaning that it's not taxed as it accumulates. A little bit different than the RRSP. You don't get that upfront tax deduction for any contributions into the TFSA.
Okay.
So it still continues to accumulate tax-free. Any gains or income made within the TFSA is tax-free, and then since you don't get the deduction when it comes gets deposited into the TFSA, then when you pass, it doesn't get taxed either.
Oh,
so that's all.
Nothing when you come out.
Nothing when it comes out, either if you withdraw it or on your passing if you're deemed to dispose of it. No tax implication.
Okay, so can you can that account be given as can be named as with a beneficiary as well?
Yes, as long as the CRA, the charity is registered with the CRA as a registered charity, and to be named a beneficiary on an account has to be an incorporated charity or an individual, but you could name them directly, and that would allow the funds to pass outside of the will and not be subject to any probate taxes.
Yeah. There's always taxes.
There's always
probate and that. And I think we've tried, or hopefully we've tried to keep it a little bit simple so that you are understanding a little bit. The TFSA seems to be like a neat vehicle to be able to put in. And does the government decide how much money can be put into a TFSA?
Yes. So each
there's a limit?
Yeah, there's a limit. Each year, starting the year you turn 18, and it's been different amounts throughout the history of the account. Right now, an individual who's been aged 18 since the program started, about 12 years ago, I guess, has $102,000 of room in their tax-free account. And that continues to accumulate each year. For 2025, we got an extra $7,000, so the government keeps giving us a little bit of room each year in that TFSA. So it's built up to $102,000.
Wow. And it'd be nice. I mean, I think that we talk about trying to save for our retirement, and I think I've mentioned that, but, trying to, it's a little easier said than done, if you can do that. But then also being able to then take advantage of that and being able to help charities or even a beneficiary of some sort, whatever. We're talking about, trying to do it with, philanthropy and that, but there's lots of ways to do it. So where do you, where do you get started with this then?
So I guess the first major thing is to figure out, where are you now? Do you have an idea of what your tax liability would be if you got hit by the bus tomorrow? So figuring out, getting an expert to give you an estimation of that number, be your accountant or your advisor, and who you have named as beneficiaries now. A lot of the times on an account, it will default to the will. And then figuring out, do I have a will? And do your beneficiaries align with what your will stipulates? So figuring out where you are now is the big number one. And then figuring out even more difficult, or just as difficult, is what do you want to happen? Talking with your spouse or your family. Are you in agreement? So you're appalled at the tax bill that would be estimated if you were to pass tomorrow. And so you figure out, okay, well, how do we reduce the tax bill, maintain a bit of control over where this money is going, and possibly create our own legacy while still being able to help out family,
right?
Or
or the charities.
Charities.
I guess we, I always say we. I mean, it's just me today, but I'm so used to having Fred with me. We talked about the fact that when Fred, I think, did his will when he was 60 or 65, and I think one of the lawyers said, way too late. Way too late. You need to, as soon as you have a house or any kind of equity, you need to be doing that. And I'm sure the younger you can do it, the better off.
Oh yes, as soon as you have, and that just allows you to maintain control of what do you want to happen when you pass, and also make it easier for your loved ones and your family members that are going to be dealing with that. Because if you die intestate, which means without a will, it's a lot of difficulty for your family, and the courts then decide what happens. Yeah. You have no opportunity to say where your funds are going or your assets. And it's very common. A lot of people just don't have a will, especially young people. But it's important.
Yeah, it is important. And I think we've talked about the person that is that would, let's say, have passed. They have had the say. They can do, this is how I want it, this is who I want to benefit, and that. So that's a good way. And on the other side, great for families, because it's a pretty tough thing to be dealing with all that when you're also dealing with the death of your loved one.
Right. Yes, it's difficult enough even when there is a will and a named executor, when you're going through all the grief, to then have to make all the financial arrangements as well. So it just makes things, just as if, you might want to prepay your funeral or have those arrangements written out, you definitely want to have a will and make sure someone knows about where it's located.
Yeah, exactly. I know that, in our modern times, and I'm of a generation that I'm still, I'm going to phone my lawyer, I'm going to phone my financial advisor, I'm going to, it's all that way. But you can do a lot of things online.
Oh, yes. And actually, RBC partners with an organization called Tribute, and I've done it for my own will. It's not in uncomplicated situations. So I have a house and I have a child. That's as complicated as it gets, and I was able to do my will and my husband's will by clicking through and saying, does this situation apply to you? And it was a lot less expensive too. Whereas going to the lawyer, setting up that appointment, it's a lot more work required, and so you might put it off. But if you can do something online for a little bit less cost, you're more likely to do it. And so there's definitely some online.
For sure. I think that, if there is online, and maybe get yourself settled. But then, as we've talked with lawyers, things change. So you always want to make sure you keep up to date. I don't think, if I understand correctly though, and I think somebody else, they had a tool that every time I wanted to change, like if I wanted to change, put my RSP to that beneficiary or to that or to that charity or whatever, I didn't have to go to the lawyers all the time. That I was able to do. Do you guys have RBC? Do you have that? It was some kind of booklet or form or whatever,
Yeah.
but maybe just the communication with you guys.
Yeah, the communication and with your spouse as well. Any dollar value of gifts should be changed in your will, and whether there's any, beneficiary changes that you want to make can be made through the investment advisor. But I'm not sure how it works with just writing it down and what makes it legal.
That's exactly right. Do you have a lot of people that are ready, or are we touching something that maybe people need to start thinking about when it comes to their RSPs or their RIFs or their TFSA to give it to a charity? Do you have a lot of people that do that, or?
We actually don't have a lot that name them directly as beneficiaries.
Right.
But we do have a lot of people that consider giving through their will, whether it's a dollar amount gift or a percentage of the will. That's very common, especially when they consider the magnitude of potential income tax liability.
Right, and you can do that. You can just take a whatever investment or whatever and give it right directly. Can you give it directly to the charity?
Yeah, so in a non-registered fund, which would be a taxable fund, there are some benefits for actually gifting the security itself. Okay. So if you're gifting the security to a charity, first you want to make sure the charity is able to accept.
Right.
But not only is the accumulated gain become null, you don't have to pay tax on that, but you also get the donation tax credit for the fair market value of the security. So there are benefits for actually donating shares of Royal Bank, for say.
Right.
In a taxable account.
Yeah, and those are options and that we can do. So if we're getting close to the end here, so I just want to give you an opportunity. Like if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah, just Google our website, Leeder and Associates at RBC Dominion Securities. You'll see our team, and there's phone numbers, emails on there, and someone would be happy to chat.
Well, special thanks to our charity, Chapman House, Grey Bruce Hospice, and to Christie Leeder for coming and sharing your knowledge with us. I still think that it's a bit complicated, all that RSP, RIF, TFSA stuff, but I think you've given us an idea, and if anybody has any questions, they can get back to you. So that concludes today's edition of Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television, Grey County. I'm Denise Reid, and I thank you for watching. I hope you join us again next week. We have Christie Kelly from IG Wealth, and we'll be talking about life insurance for philanthropy. Thanks for watching.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
You're watching an interesting local show on Rogers TV and you want to know more. That's when you head to rogerstv.com. Our website provides more information about our programs, our hosts, our schedule, and about how you too can get involved with Rogers TV. Visit us online at rogerstv.com.
This is a perfectly healthy child. What's unhealthy are birth alerts. A racist practice that may stop this Indigenous mother from going home with her newborn.